Alrighty, so Heineken Rivalry Part 2, as we're going to see some big rivalry happening in this match week weekend as well. But I'm not gonna lie, I feel like this Heineken Rivalry week is even better than last week. I mean, don't get me wrong, last week we definitely had some big rivalry, but this week there are definitely some bigger rivalry and some more well-known rivalry that is going to happen, like the Hell is Real Derby, the other Texas Derby, and then one of the rivalry that is in the first ever game that is definitely being hyped a lot is St. Louis versus Sporting KC, and I don't even know what the name of that rivalry is. I guess it's maybe the soccer capital derby, because both of these teams seems to claim that they are indeed the soccer capital of the U.S. Though the Portland Timbers would like to have a word with that as well. But either way, let us begin talking about these games. And this week, we're actually going to have all of the games that's going to be happening on Saturday night. So all 14 games happening there, which again, that will once again reignite the discussion that we've been pretty much been having throughout the season, and I think we're going to continue to have as the season goes along. Is this a bad idea to put all of these games in such a short window? I mean, I know it's benefiting MLS 360, but I just feel like they should be spraying out these games with so many rivalry that is going on, or at least that's what some people have think that is the case. Though the first game, we got Charlotte versus Nashville, as this is going to be the first of 6 games that's going to be happening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. So this is what you call the other Southeastern derby. I mean, anytime when you have two Southeastern club face against each other, like Charlotte and Nashville, Nashville and Atlanta, and to some extent Orlando and Atlanta. I guess you could call this a Southeastern derby. Though that being said, there's only one prior meeting between both of these teams. It was last year, and Charlotte absolutely destroyed Nashville in the first ever meeting. 4-1 was the final score of this game. Now, a couple of weeks ago, when you look at this matchup, a lot of people say that Nashville should get the easy win. I don't think so. And I gotta say, this could be a very interesting one, because I know Nashville has been playing well lately. So is Charlotte. Like, again, I feel like Charlotte is really flying under the radar. The fact that Christian Latanzio has been getting a lot of heat in the beginning of the season of how poor his team has played, but he's starting to figure it out. And in these last 5 games, what, they have won 4 out of their last 5. This team is definitely heading the right direction, and especially at home too. Remember how they were just so bad in the beginning of the season at home? It took them until I think the 4th home game for them to finally get their first win. Yeah, it seems like they finally found that form again in Bank of America Stadium and started to become a fortress, just like what we saw parts of last season. So yeah, this should be a very intriguing kind of matchup, and that with the way that Charlotte has been on a really good run lately, I won't be surprised they might get a result against a Nashville team that I know historically Nashville has been a very good road team. That maybe isn't the case this season. I mean, they have had their struggle this season on the road. They're not as good as they have been in the past couple of seasons. So yeah, this should be an interesting kind of matchup, and a matchup that you might even think that Charlotte maybe be the favorites coming into this one. But that being said, moving on into the next match, and this no doubt is the biggest match of this Heineken rivalry week. I mean, we do have a lot of big rivalry game, but I gotta say, Hell is Real Derby is going to be right up there in terms of the top 5 rivalry. I mean, between this and probably, I would say in terms of the ranking, I know that for me, I still think Cascadia is number 1. I know there's a lot of people have said El Trafico has passed that, but for me, just I still think nothing beats Cascadia with the hatred between two of those teams. That is the Timbers and the Sounders, and the history that you just don't see with El Trafico, at least not like 40 years of hatred like what we've seen in Cascadia Derby. But besides that, I would say Hell is Real is probably ranked number 3 in terms of the biggest rivalry in MLS, and this might be kind of the tipping point of this rivalry, where you have two teams that are very good. A Cincinnati team that has been having an incredible season under Pat Nolan and trying to push for Supporter Shield, and the Columbus Crew. I mean, I know they haven't had a good run in the last couple of games, but they did finally get a big win in the last match against the Galaxy in the middle of the week, and they're definitely a decent team too. So yeah, this is probably going to be a Hell is Real derby that, I know last year there was some great Hell is Real derby, but this one might be at its peak because of the talent that is on the field. Now, in terms of the all-time meeting, Columbus still leads the Hell is Real Derby with a 5-4-2 record. And in terms of the last five head-to-head matchup, I mean, Columbus has been still doing relatively well in the Hell is Real Derby. It was a 2-2 draw last time both of these teams met each other. A 2-0 win that Columbus had against Cincinnati. A 3-2 win that Columbus had against Cincinnati. And then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams. And then Cincinnati did win 2-1 against Columbus. This was one of the first win that they had in the Hell is Real Derby. And yeah, just overall, this is a game that it's kind of hard to predict. And what's also kind of hard to predict is the fact that, I know Cincinnati hasn't been doing well in the Hell is Real Derby, at least in the last five head-to-head meeting, but they have been so good this season at home. I mean, the 7 games that they have played at home this season, all of them has become wins. They have not lost a single game. So yeah, and against a Columbus team that have struggled on the road, I mean that maybe it could be favoring Cincinnati, but like I said, in a Hell is Real Derby, it really doesn't matter if you're the home team or the road team. Your fans are going to be expecting you to give it at its best, and I think both of these teams will do so. This should be a heck of a Hell is Real Derby. Probably ends up as probably the best Hell is Real Derby we have had in this series history. Then we go to the next one, which is DC United versus the LA Galaxy. And I would like to say this is kind of like the Heritage Derby because, two of these teams are the most historically prestige club in MLS. I mean, if you want to talk about maybe 30 years down the line, even if both of these team won't do much. Everybody will mention DC and the Galaxy, two teams that are just kind of pioneer of the league in terms of DC being the first dynasty, and then of course the Galaxy being the first to 5 championships, still winning the most championship out of any team in MLS. So there's a lot of history in this matchup, although that doesn't seem like it has been the case in the last couple of years, and really ever since MLS has hit 3.0, where both of these teams kind of have lagged behind because of it. But nevertheless, DC 4-4-5, while the Galaxy 2-3-7. And in terms of the all-time meeting, 20-11-17 in favor of the Galaxy. Last time both of these teams met each other, it was DC winning 2-1 against the Galaxy. Then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams, a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. Then the Galaxy won 4-1 against DC, and then DC won 1-0 against the LA Galaxy. So yeah, overall, DC has had the better of the Galaxy, at least in these last five head-to-head meetings, besides that one meeting where they did not show up on the road. And, knowing the fact that the Galaxy, they're still kind of struggling. I mean, I know they had that great performance against the Quakes, and many people thought that was the turning point. Nope. When they go to Columbus, they basically. I mean, I will say this: they didn't play bad in that game against Columbus, but they didn't finish in that one too. And against a DC team that they know that Wayne Rooney really wants to get his team back on track because oh god, I forgot what happened in their midweek resort, but yeah, it wasn't good for them, and that we'll see whether or not a DC can bounce back with this game against the LA Galaxy. Then we move on in the next match is the Florida Derby, or as some people say, it's the El Clásico del Sol, which, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. It's kind of, both of these teams are in the Sunshine State that is known as Florida, but I'll just call it the Florida Derby with both of these teams based in Florida, with Inter Miami taking on Orlando City. And yeah, this matchup with Miami 5-0-7, while Orlando 4-4-4. And this is kind of one of those matchup where when you have two teams that, I mean, for Miami, it's been kind of a very hot and cold kind of start to the season. They got off to a decent start, and then the 6-game losing run, and then they won 3 in a row, and now they lost their last game too. So it's been very hot and cold of that. Whereas they're playing against an Orlando City that is basically the definition of inconsistency. Like, this team has just been so inconsistent this season. Though at least in the last 2 games they kind of find that consistency of drawing games. But again, this is going to be one that is going to be tough to predict of who's going to win. I mean, if I have to give an edge, I would say maybe Miami has the edge with the way that they have played much better at home compared when they're playing on the road. But that being said, Orlando City has also done well on the road too. So again, that just adds the unpredictability of what could happen in this Florida derby. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 4-3 and 3 in favor of Orlando City, so it's a very tightly kind of battle between the two Florida team. In the last five head-to-head, you have Miami winning 4-1 against Orlando City before Orlando City winning 1-0 against Miami. By the way, I think that 4-1 victory basically confirmed that Miami were able to make it to the playoffs. Orlando then drew 0-0 against Miami before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then Orlando winning 2-1 against Inter Miami. But like I said, this is a matchup that again it's very hard to predict. I would say Miami will have the edge because it seems like they have figured out how to beat Orlando City whenever they're playing at home. Not so when they're on the road. On the road, that's been a problem for them as I don't think they have ever beaten Orlando City at Exploria Stadium. Then moving on, in the next match, we got the New York Red Bulls versus Montreal. So, the Red Bulls 2-7-4, while Montreal 5-0-7, and after Montreal basically rise like a phoenix after just a bad start to the season, it definitely come into a bit of a hole in the last game against FC Cincinnati. Whereas the Red Bulls, again, under their new head coach Troy List, and they have definitely played much better, but they'll be disappointed in the last game with the way that they played well, and they only got a point that against Toronto. But nevertheless, in terms of the all-time meeting, exactly 13 wins and 3 draws by both of these teams. And by the way, the last time both of the C met against each other, the Red Bulls, of course, lost that one against Montreal. And that was kind of the rock bottom point of the New York Red Bulls season. But they started to kind of play a lot better, especially under their new head coach and with the way that, they have, with the way that they got that big New York Derby win against NYCFC. It's not a big surprise that there's that win has kind of kickstarted their season. But they're going to be facing against a Montreal team that, for Montreal, this is another opportunity for them because I know in the last game against Cincinnati, yes, I know that loss maybe just show you that maybe Montreal aren't exactly really rising up to a point where they be a contender in the Eastern Conference. But I don't think that was kind of their point. The point for Montreal is get themselves back to respectability, and I think in the last game it was always going to be tough against Cincinnati on the road. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. But in terms of the last five head-to-head matchup, it was a 2-0 win that Montreal has against the Red Bulls. Then a 1-0 win that the Red Bulls had against Montreal. A 2-1 win that Montreal has against the Red Bulls. A 1-0 win that the Red Bulls had against Montreal. And then Montreal winning 2-1 against the New York Red Bulls. So it's been kind of very even in terms of these last five head-to-head kind of matchups. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one is going to end. But moving on, in the next match, we got the Philadelphia Union versus the New England Revolution. So something tells me this could be a preview in terms of a matchup in the playoffs. And if this is going to be a matchup that we see in the playoffs, it should be a very intriguing kind of matchup because, the Union 5-3 and 4, and I know in the last game they'll be definitely very disappointed that they did not get a win in the last one and continue the momentum that they have. Oh, and I also you know how I said DC had a disappointing performance. I take that back. They actually had a great performance in the game against the Union. Again, I'm a little bit tired after a long day of work. I kind of forgot some of the midweek kind of action. So if you're already in the comment section and you're already kind of typing, what am I talking about? DC having a bad kind of performance. They actually play well in the middle of the week, and now I can confirm that of course is the case, but not so for the Philly Union. I mean, that if you're Jim Curran, you'll be very disappointed with the way that they not only did not play well against DC in that game, but they actually got outplayed in some point. But now they're facing against a Revs team that have a 7-3-2 record and trying to bounce back after a surprising defeat against Inter Miami on the road. But in terms of the all-time meeting, is not favored the New England Revolution, 29-9 in favor of the Union. And the last five head-to-head matchup, the Union won 2-1 in the last matchup before it was a 1-1 draw. Then New England was able to win 1-0 against the Union. Then the Revs did win 2-1 against the Union, and then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. So at least the series has started to kind of even up. It used to be just the Union absolutely owned the New England Revolution, and the Revs just cannot figure out the Union with all these matchup. But it started to kind of even up a little bit, and I expect that kind of be the same case. This again could be a preview of what we see in the playoffs. Two really good team battling in the Eastern Conference, and I know there's a lot of these rivalry games that is going to be happening that maybe overshadow of the fact that if this was on a week that is not overshadowed by all these big rivalry and big talking point, this would be a game that a lot of people would be talking about, and a game that, like I said, could be a preview of what we see in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Then we go to Texas, and we're going to see Austin take on Toronto FC, as this is going to be the first of, I believe, one, two, three, I think 4 games. It's going to be at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Oh no, actually 3 games that's going to be starting at that time. Now, what's interesting is this is the first time that both of these teams head up against each other. Again, Austin, they have had a couple of Eastern Conference teams that they have yet to face, because I know this is the third year in the league, but remember, in the first 2 seasons of the league, we didn't see teams play against Eastern Conference team a lot. Though again, last season there was a lot more of that, and this season, was always kind of interesting that Austin has never met TFC. But overall, for Austin, after that big win against Seattle, we'll see whether or not if that kicks off the season. And for TFC, I mean, after that 0-0 draw at home and them still sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, yeah, I think the heat is definitely on Bob Bradley, and the fact that they don't get resort sooner or later, we maybe could potentially see a change in that TFC team, because there is no way, with the way that, yes, I know they've been dealing with injuries, but there's no way with a team that is like that, should, and the money that they spent, and that team is at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Just to show you the classic cliche that money can't always buy you success, and in the case of TFC, it definitely cannot buy themselves of getting themselves out of the bottom of the Eastern Conference. But now moving on, in the next match, we got Chicago versus Atlanta. So this is kind of an interesting one, because I know before, when Atlanta was a really good team, whenever they face against the Fire, they always tends to have some issue facing them, especially on the road. And I'm not gonna lie, the last time both of these teams face off against each other, Atlanta got very lucky in that game against Chicago, because I thought the Fire kind of outplayed Atlanta, especially in the second half. But now both of these teams, of course, meeting each other in Chicago, as Chicago 3-5-4, while Atlanta 6-3-4, and Atlanta, of course, getting that much needed win against the Colorado Rapids, in a game that they had to snap out of that losing run that they were on. But in terms of the all-time meetings, 7-1-5 over in favor of Atlanta United, and the last 5 head-to-head matchup. I mentioned the 2-1 win that Atlanta had against Chicago early this season. I mean, yeah, it was a very fortunate win for them in a game where they were being outplayed for most part. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams before Atlanta did win 4-1 against Chicago, but then Chicago won 3-0 against Atlanta, and then Atlanta winning 3-1 against the Chicago Fire. You notice how I said in that 4-0 win that Colorado has, I didn't say Atlanta is truly back, because I think it's pretty clear that we should now refrain using the word Atlanta United is truly back, because every time we say that, they just go through a really bad run of form. So I think Atlanta fans are pretty much cautiously optimistic after the performance that they had, and especially today, it was announced that it seems like Luis Araujo is on his way out, and is going to be going back to his native country, Brazil, down in I think was it Fluminense that he was transferred, if I remember, but it was something like around $7 million. And the fact that Atlanta is still able to get some pull even in terms of the money that they spent on Luis Araujo, I think that's considered a miracle, because Luis Araujo is definitely going to be going down as one of many bust DP signing that Atlanta has had in the past couple of years. And surprisingly, for a team that is as well run as Atlanta has been, they have had a lot of swing and a miss in terms of these big DP signing. And again, the fact that they are able to kind of get a little bit of, I mean, it's still, I think it's going to be a little bit of a net loss, but not as much as I thought it was going to when they eventually do move on from Luis Araujo. So yeah, he of course will be moving on from this team, and there's no doubt that that does open a DP spot that definitely opens some flexibility for Atlanta to add in the summer transfer window. But yeah, this should be an interesting one, and we'll see, whether Atlanta can continue that momentum that they had. I mean, another thing that I want to mention is, because we had a midweek game this week, fatigue could be an issue for some of these teams, and especially in the latter part of the game we'll see whether or not a fatigue could be an issue with some of these teams playing their third game in 7 days. With that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last 6 games to finish off match week number 14, aka Heineken Rivalry Week Part 2. All right, so now we get to talk about El Capitan, also known as the Texas Derby between FC Dallas versus the Houston Dynamo, also known as another Copa Tejas that we're going to have after last week. We had the Copa Tejas meeting between Austin and FC Dallas, and yeah, that was definitely something that Dallas would want to repeat after getting that 1-0 win on the road against Austin FC. But again, Dallas in another Copa Tejas, this time against what historically is their more hated rival, that is the Houston Dynamo. Again, no offense, Austin, but this meeting definitely means a lot more compared to when Austin do play against Houston or Dallas in the Copa Tejas. But nevertheless, in terms of the all-time meeting of the Texas Derby, it's a 17, 18, and 14 record that Dallas had over Houston. And the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams. Then Dallas win 2-1 against Houston before Houston winning 3-2 against FC Dallas. Then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams, and then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. So again, a lot of draws in the last couple of El Capitan meeting, which is kind of expected because for whatever reason, the Texas Derby, I think there was at one point there was just so many draws, and there wasn't a lot of kind of winner out of it, and that we'll see whether or not if this is gonna be the case again, especially for the Dynamo. The good news for them is that they are gonna be getting some of their key players back in this one. I mean, both Bassi and Hector Herrera should be back into this game after they were suspended in that game against Minnesota because of picking up a red card against Seattle. So that should really add some quality to this team where they face against the Dallas team that again, Dallas are winning games, but again, their attack still mainly goes through Jesus Ferreira, and it's not a bad thing to do because we know Jesus Ferreira is definitely gonna go down to be a guy that Dallas is going to make a ton of money, probably even more than they did with Ricardo Pepi, and a guy that's going to be definitely a future U.S. men's national team number 9 stable in that spot. But again, for in this game, I'm gonna be interested to see with the way that will Dallas continue to rely on the Jesus Fair and going that to a point where they can get another win, or will the Dynamo have a chance to go on the road, which is something that has not been kind to them. They're still looking for their first road point of the season, and what a way for them to if they can finally getting their first road point of the season by going on the road and beating their hated rival, which has not happened a lot for the Houston Dynamo. In fact, it's been a long time. I remember the Dynamo has been able to go on the road to face against Dallas and get something out of those games. But moving on in the next match, we got Colorado versus RSL. So we got the Rocky Mountain Cup, also known as I would say the Desperation Derby, because yeah, it's safe to say that both of these teams hasn't had a great season. I mean, for Colorado, things have started to kind of go a little bit sour with the way that they have now lost 2 in a row after going through a decent unbeaten run. Whereas for RSL, they've also been struggling lately too. It seems like they're back in that bad form that they had in April with a 3-3-6 record. This of course is the first of 2 games that's going to be starting at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, which is kind of odd because these are only the two Mountain Time teams, and that you usually see games starting at 7:30 local time. And when you have 2 Mountain team playing against each other, it's kind of weird that that's actually not the only game that starts at 9:30 p.m. Eastern and 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and that's because the next game I'll talk about has a special occasion. It's going to be a little bit of a late night game too in the next one that I'm going to talk about. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 25, 13, and 15 in favor of RSL. Again, RSL has really kind of dominated this Rocky Mountain Cup. No, I will say that things maybe at least at point kind of started to turn in the Rapids' favor. I mean, it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams, and then a 1-1 draw, and then RSL won 3-1 against Colorado. But then Colorado won 2-1 against RSL before RSL winning 3-0 against the Colorado Rapids. And the good news for Colorado is the fact that this game is at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, because besides that outlier that they had, I think, during the COVID year when they absolutely thumped RSL on the road by a score of 5-0. I mean, if they do play the game at Rio Tinto Stadium, or now called American First Field, yeah, it's an automatic L for the Colorado Rapids. But because this is at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, I think the Rapids still could have a chance. But overall, there's a reason why I also say that this is a desperation derby of the week, because both of these teams has not had the season that they wanted to, and this is definitely a game for them to face off against each other and potentially get a big win over their rival to kind of kickstart their season, and we'll see who exactly is going to do so. But moving on in the next match, so this is the other game that, again, I know these are the two Central team, but it seems like Fox want this to be a late start between St. Louis and Sporting KC. So that's why this game is starting at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, but it will kick off much later than the one between Colorado and RSL, because as this game is on Fox, that means you guarantee it's going to run past 25 minutes in the advertised start time. So this game is going to be starting at around 9:55 p.m. Eastern, 6:55 p.m. Pacific. Local time will be 8:55 p.m. local time. That, I think, is the latest kickoff time that is not related to whether, I think, in quite some while. I don't recall there's been an MLS game that has been scheduled to start very close to 9 o'clock. And I don't know if some of these fans would like the fact that it's a late start. I mean, for a Saturday game, I don't think St. Louis fans will mind the fact that it started really late. But yeah, that is a really late start. But I will also say that because of a late start, maybe there's going to be some guarantee MLS after dark kind of shenanigans that we could see in this one. Because yeah, again, this, I think, out of most of the rivalries that we talk about, this is probably one of the ones that is once again started to be most hyped about. Though I can understand why they're hyping this rivalry, because both of these teams tends to claim that they are the soccer capital of the U.S. And again, Timbers fan will maybe join into this conversation too, but we'll just leave them out just for the sake of talk about this rivalry and why it's maybe gonna call it the soccer capital derby. And that, yeah, I will also say that ever since we talked about this game, in the beginning of the season, it looked like St. Louis was going to absolutely trounce Sporting KC because of how bad of a form that Sporting KC has been. But for the last couple of games, and really for the past month or so, it's been kind of the opposite. I mean, it's been Sporting KC, the one that has started to wake up and started to be in good form. In St. Louis, ever since that 5-0 start, they have kind of struggled. I mean, only winning one game in their six ever since that 5-0 starts, and that maybe start teams are starting to figure them out, and that St. Louis City is starting to kind of be like an expansion team that is going through the rough time right now. But overall, despite that, I know both of these teams is going to be really up for this game. And again, when you have a rivalry game like this, it's kind of hard to predict what is going to happen. I mean, that phase at City Park, they're going to be really loud for this game. I mean, it's going to be a party atmosphere in this one, to a point where maybe that will be as the 12th man and able to guide St. Louis to get a win in this one. But we'll see whether that, of course, is going to be the case. But now moving on in the next match, we got I guess the other California Classico matchup between LAFC versus the San Jose Earthquakes. I always wonder, would you call this Cali Classico to between it, because of the fact that the Quakes are playing against the other LA team. But that being said, unlike the game against Carson, where they of course lost that one on the road, where I was confident that they were going to get a win, and they did the most Quakes thing possible, which is drop the ball and did not show any fight in that one. This one I'm not so confident about. In fact, this is a game where the Quakes, as much as I know they have had some recent success against LAFC, and this has been a team that LAFC has kind of had issue before. Not so much when it comes to their home form. They've been pretty much unbeatable against the Quakes. I think the Quakes only won once against LAFC on the road, and that was, I think, during the COVID year in a closed door environment. So they have not won against LAFC when BMO Stadium is filled with fans. But coming into this one, LAFC 6-4-1, while LAFC or San Jose 5-3-4, and this of course is the first of three games that start at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. All-time meeting, LAFC still leads the all-time meeting with an 8-0-6 record, and in the last five head-to-head matchup, like I said, when LAFC play on the road against the Quakes, yeah, usually they're gonna struggle, because the last game they play against each other was at Levi Stadium. That was when the Quakes hand LAFC their first loss of the season. And again, what's also interesting about this game is that because of the fact that both of these teams have actually played against each other so recently, I'm pretty sure there's gonna be definitely a chip on the shoulder, especially for LAFC, that they want some retribution after handing the Quakes uh uh or after the Quakes handing them their first loss this season. But before that, it was a 2-1 win that the Quakes had against LAFC before LAFC winning 3-2 against the Quakes. Then LAFC win 3-1 against the Quakes, and then the Quakes won 2-0 against LAFC. Again, not really much luck for the Quakes whenever they go on the road to play against LAFC, and I expect that could be the same case. I mean, with the way that they simply they are, I mean, I would say that the Quakes are like kind of like NYCFC of the Western Conference. You know how I talk about NYCFC have been struggling on the road, but for whatever reason, they do so well at home and look like that team that were competing for MLS Cup in the past couple of years. That's what the San Jose Earthquakes is. They're a team that play well when they're at home, but when it comes on the road, yeah, they just kind of their achieve, and that's kind of summarized the Quakes for the past couple of years too, with the way that this have always never been a great road team, and it's once again showing to be the case. And I would be surprised if they can pull off a victory in this one against the like of LAFC. But again, crazy things have happened this season in MLS, and I would say that if the Quakes can knock off LAFC, I would say it could be right up there when Sporting KC got their first win against Seattle as the biggest upset that we've seen this season. But moving on, we got the Portland Timbers versus Minnesota. So the Timbers 4-4-5, while the Loons 4-3-5. Now this is kind of an interesting one with the way that Minnesota has kind of had the Timbers number, albeit the Timbers finally got their first win against Minnesota in the past 5 meetings. But in the all-time meetings, 7-2-4 in favor of Minnesota, and the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was the Timbers winning 1-0 against the Loons before both of these teams were part of an epic 8 goals battle at Allianz Field last season with a 4-4 result. Then the Timbers did win 3-1 against Minnesota, and remember how I said the fact that the Loons have only suffered their first loss against the Timbers in the last match. That actually is not true. The Timbers actually have beaten Minnesota before, but before that, the Loons did win 2-1 against the Timbers, and then the Loons did win 1-0 on the road against the Portland Timbers. Keep in mind that 3-1 win was in the playoffs, so at least if you don't count the playoffs, the Timbers has had problems against Minnesota when they play them at when they play at home and on the road in the last couple of time, and you can maybe even include U.S. Open Cup too. But yeah, this should be an interesting kind of matchup with the way that for Minnesota. The good news for them is that they finally snap out of the losing run. Let's see whether if that win can really kind of revitalize this team, especially with the way that Reynoso is getting very close to be back. Although bad news for this team is that Robin Lillard looks like he's going to be out for at least a couple of weeks or even a couple of months because he has to go on undergo surgery. I forgot what exactly the injury he has, but anytime when you have to go under the knife for a bit, you're gonna miss some time. But again, at least Reynoso is getting close to be back, and I feel like that is probably gonna be something that I'm hoping eventually is gonna come soon because it's pretty clear that this team they're just treading water right now until Reynoso comes back to re-energize this attack, and we'll see. It's gonna be tough for them because the Timbers has been playing much better in the last couple of games, and that they're definitely looking to try to get another win against the teams that is struggling in the Western Conference. But now moving on into the next match, we talk about the other forgotten derby between the Vancouver Whitecaps versus Seattle. I mean, for the Whitecaps, it's got to be great for them to play in 2 different rivalry matchup, and 2 of them are kind of the forgotten Cascadia derby or the other Cascadia team that don't really care that they're actually part of the Cascadia Cup. But that being said, the Whitecaps 3-5-4 is their record, while Seattle 7-2-4. In terms of the all-time meeting, Seattle does have the all-time meeting 18-10-8 over the Whitecaps. And the last 5 head-to-head matchup, the Whitecaps did beat Seattle last time at BC Place with 2-1 win, but then it was a 4-0 win that the Sounders had against the Whitecaps. Then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, a 4-1 win that the Sounders had against Vancouver, and then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams. But I would also say that, for the Whitecaps, if there is a chance for them to play against Seattle, there's a chance to do so because the Sounders have not looked good in the last couple of games. Yes, they did get that 1-0 row win against the Dynamo, but yeah, the last couple of games, if you look at the home games that they have against Sporting KC versus Austin, they lost both of those. So this could be an opportunity for the Whitecaps, and again, if the Whitecaps can be a little bit more clinical in terms of their finishing, they might have a shot at this. But like I said, the thing that maybe is a little bit concerned for the Whitecaps is the fact that they have a short week to prepare for this. Though you can also say that the same goes for Seattle too, but Seattle does have a lesser travel time compared to the Whitecaps if they return from Texas to play at home. But like I said, if there is one thing that the Whitecaps at least kind of have done well is play at home. Although I will say their home record isn't as good as what we've seen before. This is a team that don't usually lose when they're playing at BC Plays, and we'll see whether that continue against a Sounders team that, again, they're definitely hitting a bit of a mini slump in these last couple of games, dropping points to teams that you would expect they easily crush them, given how they've been playing this season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the preview for all 14 of these games. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these games as part of Heineken Rivalry Week Part 2. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.